just to sum up what we're doing, it's not really trying to guess certain things from the charts of well-known people. That's not the point. I really don't like that sort of format of doing astrology myself. It is part of many workshops and many courses where we are just given a chart out of the blue and sometimes not even told whose chart it is, and trying to assume different things about the life of that person based on the positions in the chart. While this can be very helpful for learning things, it is also very misleading because we need the other side of the picture, which is the person itself, himself or herself, the life circumstances, the response to the chart, and everything like that. So, what we decided to do today is to focus on Neptune. So we're looking at charts where Neptune is somehow special in the life story, the destiny, the background of the person, and ideally that's somebody who has had an effect in his lifetime or her lifetime to a very large group of people and exerting this Neptunian effect. So let's see whether we can find traces of that, or if you have decided to look at this from a different angle, no problem. You have the complete freedom to present the charts the way you want, and we can then discuss in the group after every presentation. Now, I let you, Simona, start, and just tell me if you want me to share the chart or if you want to open it from your side. Shall I share it from my side?
Thank you. Okay, well, I'm just going to say what I'm sort of planning to do. And hopefully I might stay to that, or I might, I don't know, we'll see. But anyway, so I'm going to present Carl Gustav Jung, who I'm sure all of you know. And what I'm going to do is, am I too loud?
No, you're fine as far as I'm concerned.
All right. So basically, so basically what I thought I'd do, in fact, I'm going to start to talk about him first, about him and his life, and, obviously not extensively, but as much as just to give a picture of him. And then I'm going to look at the chart, but we can still have the chart here for people maybe to look at it while I'm talking about him.
Yes, sure. I hope everyone can see the chart.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, let's keep it in the background while you're talking. And then if you want to point us to something in it, just let me know and I will use the pointer from my side.
Okay, well, so first of all, I'm just going to say that, so Jung was born on the 26th of July in 1875. And he was born in Switzerland and in a little town called Kessville. And he died in June 1961. And basically, so just looking just this, he was a Leo sun on an angle, 6th house, moon Taurus, 15 degrees, 3rd house, ascendant Aquarius, MC Scorpio, 1 degree, and the highest planet being Jupiter in Libra in the 8th house. And then the lowest ones in the Nadir, he's got a little bunch of very interesting planets there that we can talk about later on. So that and then coming back to the theme of today, the Neptunian aspect of Jung's life, personality. So he has, and I just want to check with you, Radilina, between Neptune and Saturn, there is a trine, isn't there? Oh, no, not trine, a sextile. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
That's the sextile. Okay. So it is not a quintile.
No, it's here if you see this aspect.
Yeah, it's that one there. Okay. So anyway, so I'll come to that. So then he's got that aspect, Neptune. Then he's got Neptune, which is opposite or Jupiter in the 8th house. So his Neptune is in Taurus and in the third house, isn't it? Yeah. And so Neptune is, you know, the planet of visionary, inspiration, image, dreams, redemption, sacrifice. It's also the victim, delusion, can be to the degree of taking drugs. It's imagination, artist, the artist, beauty. That's just a few things. Yeah, I've put sacrifice because that's quite an important one with Jung. Anyway, so Jung, you know, Jung psychology, basically, which you all know, is really to do with the search for meaning and purpose. That was, you know, really his what his psychology is about. And his psychology is called analytical psychology, as opposed to Freud's, which was psychoanalysis. So one of the things that Jung said, which I think is really important, is that the core of us all, human beings, is spiritual. Or, you know, which is really important because I think he's the one who kind of started this, this trend. Now, and that, you know, we are all striving towards meaning. And that was actually one of the things he contributed to psychology. And that was that actually meaning being, you know, striving, you know, it's actually a religious attitude. Yeah. So one of the sayings that I really like that he said was, as a plant produces its flowers, so the psyche creates its symbols. I think that kind of puts in a nutshell what his psychology is about. Or another one is the acorn and the oak tree at the same time. You know, it kind of encompasses the acorn, the seed that grows through time, and then finally becomes the oak tree. So, and then the thing is that he had an obsession, one could say, almost about religion, actually from a early age. And one of the things that he has contributed to psychology is the idea of the self, which in a way kind of another word for God. And the self being the organizing center of the psyche, which is also the organizer of dreams, which he discovered by working with dreams, and is also a self-regulating principle in the psyche. So I'm just going to talk very quickly about his early years. So Jung was the son of a pastor. Do you say that, pastor? Yeah. And so he was brought up in a situation where he was actually very lonely as a child. You can see that actually by the Saturn in the first house. And he was introverted and shy. And he really was very preoccupied about God. I mean, of course, his father was a pastor. And I think, and there was a lot of tension between him and his father in terms of the religion and, you know, the values to do with religion. So that was all through his life. Now, also in his childhood, he had a lot of visions and dreams, which at the time when he had them, he actually, some of them he didn't quite understand, but they took him, some of them were overwhelming. I don't know if any of you have read Memories, Dreams and Reflections. In there, you can read about those dreams that he had at the point when he was a child, which actually some of them he didn't understand until the very, very end of his life. And they had, to start with, in fact, they did have an archetypal quality about them. But then as a child, he had not discovered the archetypes as it was yet. Now, he was interested in parapsychology. He had, I think, a cousin or something who actually was a medium, and he used to sit in a circle with her. And then, of course, in fact, he also his thesis when he studied psychiatry was actually on mediumship. And that thesis came out, I think, in the 60s or something like that, or was well known, and that actually created a lot of criticism by people that he was. They took him for a charlatan in a way at that point. His reputation was not very good or accepted by the general public. Anyway, so he became a psychiatrist, and he worked for somebody called Bleuler, who had a psychiatric hospital, and he worked with patients who were schizophrenic. This is all the first sort of part of his life. So he, which is very interesting because he became very, very knowledgeable about schizophrenia. And of course, schizophrenic patients brought him their dreams, their fantasies, and so forth. And he noticed that the patients that came to him suffered from meaninglessness. During the first time, that part of his life, he also, that's where he found, he kind of, created his theory on the complexes. So that's quite interesting. Now then, let's move to the second part of his life, which was in 1913. That's when it started, really. Now, obviously, he had met Freud, and as we all know, he became, Freud was 20 years older than him. So he was considered by Freud like as if he was going to become the heir of continuing psychoanalytical psychology for Freud. So that was going on for a while until Jung and Freud actually started to disagree about certain things. And in fact, in 1913, they split. Now, the reason why they split was on the subject of psychic energy, because Freud's idea of psychic energy was to do with sexual energy. That was, he saw it as sexual energy, and also Freud's psychology was very, if I can put it, regressive. Now, Jung's whole idea of the psyche, of the psychic energy, was very different, because what he saw was that psychic energy actually is an energy that is striving forward towards meaning and purpose. So it's the religious drive. So that's where they differed, because of course Freud did not in any way did not agree with Jung about myths and that, you know, myths and fairy tales and stuff like that as a whole in his psychology. So in 1913 they broke, and actually I think it was Freud who broke from Jung, and Jung found himself to start with during that time completely, you know, it's like a carpet being pulled from under his feet. He didn't know where he was anymore. He'd had Freud to speak to about his dreams, and they shared that, and so he was completely lost to start with, and he started to be depressed, and I think that was during the war anyway. And so that is between 1913 and 1918 that he actually had that experience of the confrontation with the unconscious. So where at that time he had a breakdown, and the unconscious kind of overwhelmed him, and he had fantasies, dreams, all kinds of content from the unconscious that welled up from inside. Now, you can really see that at the bottom of the chart, all that stuff, you know, the Pluto, Moon, and, Neptune very much, and Chiron. Anyway, we can come back to that. So he started to try to find some way of dealing with this. And what he started to do was to start and record all his fantasies and all his dreams. So that was a way for him to anchor, you know, to give form to his unconscious. In a way, that's the Saturn, you know, kind of contain what was going on inside him. So he was, so he started at that point to, that's when he created the Black Book, which actually finally has come out now. And in the Black Book, he would write stuff like everyday kind of stuff. And then he had the Red Book, which probably most of you might have in your library at this point, where he drew and painted all his symbolic experiences. That he made a beautiful, really like art, but he said that it was not art. It was a way for giving form to his inner life. And he was very adamant about that, actually. Yeah, so that was then what I mean. This is important, you know. The way he discovered that he could use this particular technique of inner dialogue, where he was conversing. So, like the ego was conversing with unconscious content, and that was a way for him to again find a way so that the unconscious would not overpower him, and also to actually take the power away from the unconscious, so that there was a kind of an ongoing dialogue between the ego and the unconscious, which could be constructive. So I think that all. Yeah, so then what I wanted to say was, in terms of his Neptunian character, was the transits that were going on during that time of 1913 and 1918. Because that again is, so now let's see, that was a period really of dissolution of his identity, So Neptune was actually transiting his seventh house. Yeah. Let's see. Which is in Virgo and Leo. At the same time, Uranus was transiting over his ascendant, opposite the Sun, and Uranus in Leo in the seventh house. So there were quite a lot of things going on, not only the fact that he was going through the confrontation with the unconscious, but at the same time also looking at the Uranus in the seventh house, he had affairs with Tony Wolff, who was, I think she was a patient of his to start with. So, very, very, very unconventional relationships at that time. Today it wouldn't happen anymore, but at that time they didn't have this kind of boundaries that we have today, where you can't actually have relationships with your clients. But it was Tony Wolff and Spielrein, and then he was married with Emma Jung, and so there was a lot going on there in his marriage, and he had friends that he'd lost, so he was very isolated. So I think Sudan, I'm just trying to think if I've forgotten anything before looking at his chart. Neptune was conjunct his descendant and Sun, which was squaring Neptune in Taurus, conjunct Chiron, and his, at that point, that was also his path of fortune. I think his path of fortune is down there, isn't it? Anyway, I think it is near his Chiron, but you've got it up there, haven't you, Radilina? But
so that must be a different formula for calculating the part of fortune. I don't know if you remember that there was a day formula and a night formula. And usually if you use astro.com or something standard, it will probably convert it to night formula for him, because the sun is, not exactly over. Maybe it's counted as underneath the horizon. But I use the day formula. And for that reason, it's different.
Okay. All right, so I'm not familiar. I know you gave a talk on the path of fortune, which I haven't actually listened to yet. So I should be doing that soon.
Okay, well, all the explanations about what this is about, what's the day formula and the night formula, found there.
Yeah. So I think this is about it, really. I can what I can do, if people are interested, is there's so much that he contributed to psychology. There's so many, he did actually map the psyche, and so again, I don't have here in front of me a map of the psyche, but he obviously he kind of he put the layers onto the unconscious. So first you have the persona, which is what we show the world, and then under the persona is the ego, and then you've got the personal unconscious, and you've got then the collective unconscious, and then in the collective unconscious you've got you've got the shadow, which can actually be part of the personal unconscious as well. And you've got the anima and the animus. And so, you know, in the, I mean, he worked with myths and fairy tales, and yeah, I mean, it was so rich. I mean, then we've got synchronicity. You know, he discovered synchronicity. Another thing that he did, which is really important, which is different from Freud, is that he discovered that in the unconscious, you know, the unconscious is not merely, you know, a depository of old stuff. It is actually, it's full of seeds for the future. And he was the first one to discover this. And he called them the scintilla. So that's the inner stars, and which is very interesting. So that's unconscious content that actually it's new ideas that we have, or and so forth. And of course, the dreams, he kept his dreams absolutely, you know, he recorded them. And he what I like actually is about working with the dreams was that he felt that you could see the religious drives in the dreams. If you kept your dreams for a long time, you could see the patterns of religious you know, the archetypal patterns, which would be, you know, sacred rituals, and you know, you could see the self moving through the dream process. I've done that myself, because I was in analysis for quite a few years, and it is fascinating to see those particular archetypal images that occur in the dreams, and that of course really does make your life very meaningful. Then the shadow was another thing that he, you know, we all talk about today, don't we? The shadow, which is, you know, unknown content for us, which needs to be made conscious. And he had a very positive outlook on that he said that, you know, if we can integrate the shadow into our everyday personality, there is more of us. And I do like that, meaning, you know, there is more of us. We are afraid, most of us, to integrate those parts that we deny. But in fact, there is the bright shadow, and there is the, in quotes, the shadow that we are frightened of, you know. But both of them are well worthwhile trying to integrate into your everyday consciousness. And I'm just going to say about the self. So the self, well, I've already talked about the self, haven't I? You know, it's the totality of the psyche. It's conscious and unconscious together. And yeah, so, well, and then let's see if we go to the chart. And now, like you said, Radilina, looking at, you know, here we have the man. Now, what about how can we see the man in the chart, sort of thing? Well, certainly that little boy who was very shy as a child, I would say that Saturn is in the first house, maybe is a sign of that. And then you've got the axis, haven't you, of the first and the seventh house. So he had that dilemma all the way through his life. And meaning that in the 7th house he's got a Uranus, which is very different from Saturn. He had a yod, actually. So he had a yod between Jupiter and Mars and Pluto. So he did have, he was well known for actually having, you know, the Mars, Pluto. He had a temper, he could have a real temper. And actually, especially during the time of when he had the confrontation with unconscious, at the beginning, he used to shout and scream in his home and stuff like that. During that time, actually, of the confrontation of the unconscious, he did say that what kept him actually sane was his family, you know, the fact that he had his family there to anchor him. Now, he's got all kinds of interesting aspects. He's got 40 squares. He has one rectangle. He has the yod, and he has a cradle. So it's just like such a rich, that's what I felt when I looked at this chart. It really does portray the such a dynamic personality. And he had, let's see now, 40 squares. He had 9 squares, and he had Mars and MC, there is 9 aspects. So, you know, it's kind of lots of stuff going on. And then, you know, there is that cluster of Moon Pluto, which, you know, all the energy sort of seems to go there. Lot of things happening down Moon Pluto in Taurus. So for me, Moon Pluto is to do with the mother or the feminine, the anima, you know, and then the Neptune, you know, Neptune, the Chiron. Well, you know, that's the sacrifice, isn't it? You know, Neptunian sacrifice, redemption. And he did actually say that, you know, his own psychology is, you know, in a way, it's the redeeming yourself that, you know, really, you know, it's self-therapy. In fact, he did suggest that that his clients eventually, when they had been in psychotherapy with him for a while, that they actually learned how to interpret their own dreams. So yeah, and then one thing that I really like about him was he used to say, when he saw all these people gathering around him, he used to say, well, you know, I am not a Jungian. And he actually did, I don't think he wanted anyone, he didn't want that to happen, to have a whole load of people saying they were Jungians. So he was a very great individualist, indeed. Well, I don't know. I think at this point I'm ready for people to come in, and if there's any questions or anything that you want to add, because I'm sure I've forgotten lots of things. So, you know, there you go. So any questions, or have I got it?
Yeah, if anyone wants to ask a question. Yes, Stephen?
Okay. This schism between Jung and Freud, premises you were saying about religiosity. Well, you have Freud's chart, but for Freud having an ascendant of Scorpio, and for him having a very strong Jewish background in a time when anti-Semitism was rising.
Yeah.
Freud looked at using religion as being used against his psychoanalysis. He wanted to avoid it completely. And in terms of the transpersonal development related to the mysticism of Judaism, Freud wanted nothing to do with the Kabbalah.
Okay, interesting.
In that particular regard, it wasn't that Freud was against religion. He just looked at if he incorporated religion in psychoanalysis, it would be held against psychoanalysis because he was Jewish.
That's a very good point, Stephen. Very good point. That really kind of places it within the history of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I have never heard that before. That really is brilliant. Because, of course, you know, if one goes to Freud's museum here in London, he had a lot of kind of gods and, you know, various archetypal objects. And I think you're absolutely right. But still, yeah, go on.
Well, in Freud's own work, The Interpretation of Dreams, he makes a very significant self-disclosure about, as a little boy, his own kind of introversion, as far as looking up to his father and seeing an instance in the street where his father, because he was Jewish, stepped to the other side of the street. And that was a humiliating experience for Freud as a little boy.
Wow.
Carried that with him throughout his life. The very fact he wrote that in his interpretation of dreams struck me as a very salient point.
Absolutely, that's a very interesting point. It's interesting to, you know,
he was ashamed of his religion. He felt ashamed of his religion, but he had to embrace it because, as you said, the spiritus is the breath of life.
Yes. Very interesting. That is very interesting. I have not seen that, not that I have read too much about Freud, but I haven't actually read that. And is there anywhere one can read about that, you know, or how did you pick it up?
Well, just recently I realized this Jewish background and, you know, anti-Semitic character of the times, let's say, when I had a book about Sabrina Spielrein. You mentioned
yes.
That woman that he had a relationship with, who was initially a patient, and then she became a colleague because she had her own ideas about psychology that she developed. Very interesting Scorpionic character who was connected to both Freud and Jung and was kind of a mediator at some point between the two. She was also Jewish. She was a Russian Jew. And there was a very interesting dynamic between the three of them. And part of the reason, probably, at least that's what I came to the conclusion from this book, is that apart from the personal side of things, you know, the love affair and, you know, all the squabbles about different aspects of psychology, that the three of them were discussing a lot between them. It was this religious idea was very much part of why Jung and Freud, at the end of the day, parted ways, because they had very different backgrounds, traditional backgrounds, and for some reason also Jung was isolated because of that, and he had maybe not other way but to become a pioneer in psychology in a completely different direction without necessarily having to do with Freudian school. And yeah, that's a lot of it. Let's not, I mean, I can say a lot more, but I don't want to because we have so much we can cover here about Freud and Jung. The letters between them are very interesting. There is a published book with the letters. I can show it to you, actually. It's here.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Yes. I'm not sure if it could be seen well, but
very interesting.
He didn't really want this to be published, but some of that can reveal so much of the personal background.
Yeah.
And also the idea about astrology as a Neptunian science, what we spoke about a little bit last week. Maybe Jung, from my point of view, was a pioneer in bringing psychology into a perspective where we can see the traces of astrology underneath, as he was an avid student of astrology, even though he didn't reveal that very much. Again, the sign of the times, it wasn't wise to be very open about it. But Neptune is exactly square the sun. Maybe you mentioned that, Mona. I'm sorry if I'm repeating that.
Me too. I'm sorry that I didn't mention it. It is exactly.
It's just because it's such an exact aspect. I mean, it's a 0 degree. And when we have the sun in a chart, involved with an outer planet in that way, we know that this planet becomes extremely important. So if that was, I mean, of course, at some point, I mean, we can say he was a Uranian as well. He has Aquarius ascendant, and Uranus is conjunct the sun. But Neptune is very close by aspect. So we can call him a Neptunian, we can call him a Uranian, maybe we can also call him a Plutonian, because you very well mentioned that yacht, which I haven't shown because I thought if here in the middle we have too many aspects, it will be very confusing to follow. But yes, there is a very exact yacht, and one of those yachts that are when we had the yacht discussion, we said the greatest yacht, I mean the strongest one we could have, is when Pluto is at the apex of it. And
Right.
here in his chart we've got this, and it's Mars, Jupiter, and Pluto. Pluto conjunct the moon, another story. You know, those planets in Taurus, they connect him with Freud a lot. Because Freud was a Taurus sun, and they had a sun-moon conjunction, which is pretty accurate. It's, you know what that means in synastry, how close two people naturally become to one another, and how much of this easy flowing understanding there could be when we have sun-moon conjunctions. So any other comments from you guys?
Can I just add, Radelina, you reminded me of the sun being exact, you know, square to Neptune, and of course that in fact also can be seen as his that it was his vocation, his calling, you know.
Exactly.
So you know, because that and of course, you know, that's what his psychology is about. You know, he created the active imagination. You know, very important sort of techniques to work with a Neptunian,
Yes.
you know, content.
He was probably the greatest contributor of promoting Neptune in a way. He was born just a few years after Neptune was discovered, and within that initial period when, you know, everybody was meant to be under the influence of this new energy and to understand what this new energy is all about. And I don't personally know any other source, any other psychologist or person that acted in these psychological or code sciences at that time that was so exemplary and so influential at the end of the day for developing the idea of the unconscious and the what you mentioned, not just the personal, which Freud was already into, but the collective unconscious. And another word for Neptune is the collective unconscious.
Absolutely, yeah. And then also, like you said last time, Radina, which is really important. I mean, he's got all these planets in Taurus, and you know, he's got the Saturn in the first house, and in fact, he was actually quite a down-to-earth man, and you know, he lived in the country, and also, like we were saying last time, you know, if you want to be able to cope with Neptune, you have to have a strong ego.
And a strong Saturn, maybe.
Well, and there you go, a strong Saturn. So he's absolutely the epitome of that. And
yes.
that particular aspect, you know, of the cradle, I was fascinated by it, because that actually shows, you know, he's got these three trines, and you know, pointing to a Saturn. So you know, he was, and of course, you know, he kept writing and writing and writing, and writing is really a way of anchoring, of you know.
Yes, you reminded me that in some other systems of calculating the chart, the Neptune will be in the third house, so very close to the cusp of the third house, which makes a lot of sense, I think, if we think about it, to the writing, you know, expressing the dream visions, recording the dream visions, and they were those experiences that he had during his lifetime, ever since childhood, were extremely typically Neptunian. As you explained, and as you gave us so many examples. You didn't mention this thing about the personality number one, personality number two.
Yes.
He's so often talking about in his writing. and how there was almost like this idea of maybe many people have that idea, but he was developing it a lot and observing himself over time of almost like having those two personalities, one which is more religious or at the same time scientific, so the reasonable guy, the Saturnian guy, maybe we can say, the scientist, the one that questions everything and tests everything empirically, and works with patients in that way, works with the whole idea of how he presents his psychology so that it's acceptable in that very structured world of the 19th century and then the 20th. But at the same time, the Neptunian side, that's personality number 2, that is looking for a way to emerge. And I think at some point he discovers that he reaches his sun in Leo, which interestingly is on the descendant, very related to working with other people, being an influence to other people one-to-one. And that's many people working with patients or with consulting professions, have suns in the 7th house or around this area of the chart. Freud too. So Freud and Jung have suns in the 7th house. So that's very interesting. They also both have south nodes in Libra. I don't know if you know that. Maybe interesting.
What did they have? What in Libra?
The south node. The south node in Libra.
Okay, right. Yeah.
And the north node in Aries, which is maybe a hint towards their pioneering work, because each one of them in their own way did pioneering work. Anyway, so much can be said, but the Saturn in Aquarius is like the personality number 1, probably. And then Uranus with the Sun square Neptune could be to do with personality number 2. It's just one interpretation, however.
But also,
sorry. I was just going to say that with his sun being on the descendant like that, being right there on the 7th house, it's actually like he himself, he is 2 different people. When we're saying personality 1, personality 2, that's another interpretation of it. When you talk about his Neptune being there, actually would be closer to his 3rd house, which is the Gemini house. There's that picture of 2 again, that picture of duality and of conversation between 2 things and 2 entities. So I think with his sun being right there, it's he himself, it's kind of a representation of he himself being more than one person, and not, of course it's him and being in practice and being in conversation with other people and with therapy, but his kind of career and occupation is basically mirroring what is actually happening within him or within inside of him.
Yes, very good point. And maybe the way we can see it is that Neptune is feeding onto the sun, and the effect that it's having on the sun is then contagious for all those people that are being influenced by Jung. And he was very famous of being particularly influential among women. So some people regard the pair, Jung and Freud, as the father of psychoanalysis and the so-called mother, which is Jung, but mother not directly, but his whole approach was a lot more lunar. He was the moon in Taurus in the pair, and Freud was the sun, but also the Neptune effect. And if I haven't shown here the asteroids, the 4 asteroids that we spoke about recently, but interestingly, they are all in the 7th house of Jung. Oh, so he had them all in his 7th house. A little bit further into the 7th house, I don't think all of them conjunct the sun and Uranus, but this is connected, I think, to what you, Robin, just said. This sun is like shining towards others in a way, and very, very contagious. He had this famous circle of women around him, a lot of them, literally devoting their lives to being his, followers, and then
collaborators.
Yeah,
and I think they were nicknamed as the Valkyries.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think he spent his life trying to find out who he was.
Absolutely.
That's what he guided other people in doing.
That's it. Absolutely.
It was a kind of mirror.
Yeah. I mean, that's what is so heroic about. I mean, it's the hero's journey,
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
It's like he was fighting with Neptune all his life. He was a kind of struggling with Neptune. And when you read his memories and reflections, for example, or anything, it seems like an internal struggle to me all the time. And then he's drawing the conclusions from that that can then be summarized into some concepts about psychology that can be applied to everybody. And leading by example in a way. Going
But
back to
also,
this.
yeah, and you know, I think this personality number 1 and number 2 can also be seen in his technique of inner dialogue, you know, which you know is very much like if you read a red book and various, because the inner dialogue was really the conversation between the conscious self, the scientific part of him, if you want to,
Yes.
with the unconscious, which is the Neptunian part. And for him, what was important about that particular technique was to personify Neptune, the Neptunian contents. And so he had kind of, you know, sub-personalities like Philemon, like Solomon, like, you know, various inner personalities. And then the importance, which was really the scientific bit of that, was to be able to differentiate. And that, in a way, is a way of taking back projection, which is so important. So he did something incredibly important for us through that struggle that he was going through all through his life.
Yes, put the foundations of a new way of working and healing. And just maybe
Yes.
finally,
Yes.
before we switch to the next chart, to maybe point out also to the Chiron square, the sun next to Neptune, and how the two energies mix and could be a lot to do with why it wasn't anything else but exactly this sort of role that he assumed, the role of the psychiatrist. That was up to the end, I think, working with cases and not just theorizing about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, a healer in practice, in a way.
Yeah.
Okay, so interesting, Simona. I mean, I didn't want to curtail it here because it's so much more. I'm just a little bit like watching the time so that we have the time for the others as well. Do you guys want a quick break and then we can go on? Just 5 minutes. Yes? Well done, Simona. Thank you so much one more time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
See you in a minute. Okay, I suggest Lauren goes next. How about that, Lauren?
I'd like that. Teng you. I think it would be a nice contrast when they see where it's almost the opposite side, the Neptune.
Okay.
From the one from Jung. Okay, so you're going to let me be host and I'll bring up my screen?
Yes, go ahead. So you can show us the way you calculate the chart.
So do I do anything but share screen? Do you have to? Okay, let's see if, oh, here it is.
You should be able to do it, yeah.
There we go. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, so here is the person, Paramahansa Yogananda, and he had a huge influence on the world. Let's see if I can close it up a little bit. There we go. That's a little better. And what you're seeing on the, just so I'm going to start, but on the outside of is just a prenatal, because I've based my talk not only on a bio, but also a lot Dane Ridger symbols and knowing his life as well. But the outside is not transit, it's a prenatal. And I was looking for that Sabian symbol, so I just left it up. But really what I'm talking about, here's Neptune up here. And it's exactly the same Sabian symbol as his Pluto. They both are at 9 degrees. And as you can see, the MC is up there as well. And I'm going to be talking about, I'm first going to, this in case people don't know an image of him, here is one of his images. There are many. This is Paramahansa Yogananda, and he wrote the very famous book, Autobiography of a Yogi. So he was, I think I want to start with the Sabian symbol and then I've kind of write things up. So the first thing is I want to just talk about his north node for 1 second and give the Sabian symbol for it. A bridge being built across a gorge. And one of his big things is to bridge for humanity from his lineage from east to west. And that was the mission, and to bring a certain methodology of yoga that brings you to a realization of self in the way of Jung, in that sense of the full self, that you have integrated everything and you have then are in a oneness. Let's see, I'm going to just ask one, like Rodolina, could you tell me, do you know him at all?
Oh, absolutely new to me, and I rely on you to tell me who he was.
Okay. And then I'm going to get one more. Well, no, I don't have to. But anyway, he comes from a lineage.
I know him. I know him, Lauren.
Okay, thank you. It's just to know, but
yeah,
I'm going to.
I know him. Yeah.
He comes from a lineage of Jesus Christ, Krishna, Bhagavan Krishna, Lahiri Mahasai, Sri Yukteswar, and Babaji, who is like this yogi who has existed for hundreds of years, has learned this and lives in the Himalayas. So this is this lineage of what he's trying to bring forth to humanity. Okay, so I'm going to start with a little bio for you. He was the first yoga master of India to take up permanent residence in the West, in the United States, and lived his last 32 years in America. He was, as you can see, just the obvious, born in 1892, and that is not correct. Why does that say December 19th? It should be January 5th.
No, that's the date of the prenatal new moon, because you have calculated.
Oh, okay. I just thought, oh no. All right, good. Okay, so he was the first yoga master so he wrote the book Autobiography of a Yogi. It's been translated into every language, and it really tells his story. It's a very thick book. I read it myself, and I am a part of this lineage. I'm a Kriyaban. So was the first yoga master of India to take up permanent residence in the West. He lived his last 32 years in America. He introduced millions, and we're talking about that Neptunian influence. He influenced millions to the teaching of meditation. I have many books of his poetry, many books that he's written besides his own autobiography. He was a fantastic poet. He wrote a book of chants and songs, very beautiful. And there are Yogananda meditation sites. It's called the Self-Realization Fellowship. And the part of it is that there was to be no religious, I'll say that no religious creed, no religious color, no religion. It was for all humanity. And that was the idea of this fellowship. And it was about self-realization from the inside. Each person has this unity within themselves. So he brought forward the science of Kriya Yoga meditation. And when he was a baby, the mother, both his parents were devotees of Lahiri Mahasai, and they were, and so he was said to be this baby's destiny is to bring a great transformation to humanity. It will bring many, many to that. And so his inspiration was to be for all people of all races, cultures, and creeds. At 17, he began meditating long hours. He was very smart, but was wanting to just meditate. And at 17, he met his guru of Swami Sri Yukteswar and spent the next 10 years with him, and learned this type of oral tradition that was given at the time, they said, that Krishna gave it to Arjuna, and then it was lost, and then it was given to Babaji, and then it went through this lineage of which Paramahansa Yogananda was to give this forward to the world. So the next 10 years he was with Swami Sri Yukteswar, and he graduated Calcutta University in 1915. He was at that point 22 years old, and he started immediately in 1917. He was given large acreages, a school for boys, so they could have a new way of educating themselves that was a total thing where they could incorporate yoga and meditation and physical health of the body plus studies. And in 1920, he had a divine vision that he was immediately to leave for Calcutta. So he left for Calcutta, India. And in about 2 or 3 days, he was invited to be a delegate to the International Congress of Religious Leaders in Boston. And he knew this was his destiny, so he went there. And in 1920, that same year, he funded the Self-Realization Fellowship, this ancient science. And in 1924, he left and did a tour cross country. He was very, very well received in Boston. And he immediately had people that just adored him and wanted to support his work and follow him. And then in 1925, he set up an international headquarters in Los Angeles, and of which and from 1924 to 1935, he toured the country and things like the LA Philharmonic audience. Now, this is a man with a turban on, or long hair, dark skin, and the LA Philharmonic audience had 3,000 seats filled to capacity, and an hour before it began, they had to start turning people away. And so he he spoke at Carnegie Hall. Again, I don't know how it's possible, except a certain kind of destiny and magnetism, that this man, the first Eastern meditative yogi, comes to America and attracts these huge crowds at that time in history from 1924 to 1935. His theme of his work is underlying unity, and for everyone to be able to have a direct personal experience of their God self, of God. And he was able to himself initiate 100,000 people in his 30 years. And in my 90s, he not only did he do the books, but he also established, like, each was like a magazine. And in the 90s, I took his 30 lessons, but I didn't want to be an initiate of the method yet. And so I did it again this past year, and I am now. But it's these magazines and of lessons that he himself left his students. He had these students all in Los Angeles, and then that 100,000 that he took all the way through this and was able to teach meditation to them. So he was very organized. He made sure to ground everything and leave humanity, because it has thrived in a huge way since then. He did commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. He isolated him. His last years were in seclusion in 1946 until he died in 1952. Were in seclusion, and there he wrote and wrote. He wrote all the commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. He wrote all the commentaries on Jesus Christ, all the writings of the books, all the books of Jesus Christ, and did the lessons. He did Whispers from Eternity, which is amazing lectures. And then on March 7th, 1952, he made something what's called Maha Samadhi, where, because he mastered the science of the body and how it functions, he was able to just tell people he's leaving. He told people he was leaving that day. He was at a beautiful dinner. He was fully healthy. And then after he gave a speech, he just went into the other consciousness deliberately. It's called Maha Samadhi there, and his body did not deteriorate. There was not one bit of deterioration for 20 to 30 days afterwards. I don't know what happened after that, whether it's never deteriorated, but he has this presence. He set up a retreat at Encinitas as well as in Los Angeles. And that's where he wrote Autobiography of a Yogi. I was there, and they still do silent retreats there. And I felt his presence. I felt his real life. I couldn't believe it. But so in a way, he has mastered this this life process that we are all in, and he has a scientific methodology to bring any person of all creeds, of all religions, of this underlying part that we are all part of. Okay, so that's what I picked out to say for his biography. Now I want to do the astrology part of it, which is I want to show you piece by piece. We've got Neptune and Pluto here in Gemini, and they are exactly conjunct, like what do you call this? 8 minutes? 8 minutes and 59 seconds and 8 minutes and 11 seconds. Do we call them minutes and seconds in astrology?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so meaning they'll have the same 9 degrees. And what it is a quiver with arrows. That was the Dane Ridger image of that degree there, 9 degrees Gemini. And you go through, and this is the farther explanation I'll like read in my this, and I'll look at James Burgess, and then I'll pick out something that really was the conclusion of it. It goes through and beyond the obstacles on its path, and the destruction of the obstacles is that is in the negative sense, not the cohesive will sense of the ego, but the destructive part of the ego, and to be able to conquest that so that you can have this self-realized expression in your life, the mastery over self. Challenges are, and he saw challenges. This is the symbol. Challenges are tests to focus the mind. So back with that quiver with arrows that you can pull out, and you can really get your target because you're able to conquest through any obstacle. And that is what his Neptune and his Pluto are about. Of course, them being conjunct gives a great power to his Neptune and a great ability of transformation and focus to Neptune, which to me, this Neptune represents, in my, the highest Neptunian spiritual aspect of it versus, Neptune who get into drugs or delusion or what this or that. His thing was meditation, the meditational mind, and how that brings the power into oneself. And the MC here, so close that it's a conjunction to this whole thing, and I just want to give you the Sabian symbol for that is drilling for oil. And so you think about oil is very rich and it's a natural resource, and when you're drilling, you're going into the earth deep to extract the oil. And so that image, I think, shows that his spiritual mission was to do something very deep that would change humanity, and as many people as he could bring to a further peace in their life. Now, I have Neptune here, and it is opposite, has an opposition to Venus and Sag. And I want to read you the Sabian symbol for that: tiny children in bonnets. And what I was thinking about it being in the 4th house, this is kind of that lovely home pleasure. He loved his home. He loved his family. He wanted all those pleasures like we all do in that family home. And yet it also was in contrast to this mission that he came to do, which is the power, the transformative aspect of going very deep in order to reach the very most wide thing of all, which is spiritual realization of in the self, and that you yourself are experiencing the vibrational frequency of what is God. And then I want to talk about Neptune is sextile right here, Mars. And I want to read the Sabian symbol for that. Square, brightly lit on one side of that square. And so I thought about, well, what is that? And I read in James Burgess some of that. And it talked about that your life purpose gets crystallized with that image of Mars. And so I look at the ideals, the highest ideals of this Neptune, being able to focus so that you can have these, and how that gets crystallized here, and a life purpose. Yes, and then I want to talk about Neptune is trine Saturn. So let's find that over here. There we go. Neptune trine Saturn here. Saturn's in Libra. And the Sabian symbol for that is children blowing soap bubbles. And his emphasis was also on play and how important it was. So you've got a Saturn with a very light thing of children blowing soap bubbles, and the importance of that kind of community of fun also that he promoted. And he wasn't a mean, strict, although he was commanding of exactitude. But I look at the Saturn in Libra softens it as well, because Libra's asking for balance, and yet it's also materializing in the second house that which his Neptune and Pluto and MC had as its purpose. And then I set Neptune is also quincunx Uranus. So here we go, that line down here. And the Uranus image is a drowning man is being rescued. And for him, it was like he wants to help humanity, and the drowning man is all of us, and to being able to help and rescue anybody who is drowning. And it is with his south node here, and and then I point out that this is part of a finger of God here, both with his Uranus and south node up to this cluster up here involving the Neptune, which is my focus, down here to the Mars, which then gives the power of the crystallization of purpose, and here focus to the meditation states. And in meditation states, when you're in a meditational state of his lessons, they take like everything I've ever concentrated on music and the focus of so much to be able to achieve what he's asking you to achieve inside that meditation. It's like the mind wants to wander off here, there, and everything. And he's got a certain place where you're holding a certain thought, and, you know, it takes a great deal of will. And here we, as I said, the drowning man is being rescued. And I also, this south node is at the Sabian symbol of a gold rush. And in that, it was talked about that greed is a distortion of a deeper and more wholesome appetite for increasing life experience. I want more of good stuff. But here you go, rescuing from that and being able to get to the highest states of meditation up there. Again, using that square brightly lighted on one side, the crystallization of one's purpose. And here, I also want to point out that in this, we've sometimes in a yod, we go to the midpoint between the two sextiles, and we say that that is a very important part of the yod of God, which is this point, and it happens to have his north node, which I said was a bridge being built across a gorge being so deep like a schism. And before he came on the planet, there was a huge schism between East and West, and West being represented, you could say by Europe, but I'm going to say by United States, where he wanted to just give this knowledge and set up, is how he was told by his lineage of yogic masters. He was the one who had to come to America and disseminate this information and help people with the science of Kriya Yoga. And also, he is an incredible inspiration speaker. And as you can see by filling up 3,000 seats of LA auditorium and every place he wanted to play in those entertain, not entertain, teach. I mean, it was all mixed, that he was so magnetic of a personality. And I put that magnetic personality also with the Pluto being with his Neptune and MC, that would give him this, plus his destiny of a bridge being built across a gorge. And his big thing was the uniting of the East and West. And he was born and placed within this lineage in order to do so, and had the absolute discipline himself to meditate. He was the most determined. I read so much about him, and he's so determined. You must come to me, God. You must, and this Christ, come now. And his kind of calling forth the higher energies to inhabit his body and get him to do what he needed to do. And he manifested. It wasn't easy with the quivers. The whole idea is conquest through every obstacle, and knowing that you can make it through every obstacle that your life presents to you, and that every obstacle is a test, in a sense of shining forth your will. That was the other thing. It's not just the will of the negative a tantrum of a 2-year-old will, but the will of meditational, I will achieve this. I can do this, and holding that up. He had Neptune square the ascendant, and I'm going to read the Sabian symbol for that, and that's a harem. And I thought, that's funny, as an ascendant for him, a harem. But I looked it up in the different sources, James Burgess, and of course the mandala and the Eric Jones, and the bigger explanation of that was to be able to be and not always be doing. Like, you don't have to achieve everything. That he was always being told, by being still and doing the meditation, the beingness of your beingness gives you that magnetist power that will go out and get the things done also in the physical world in a more magical, wouldn't use magical, I use magical way, but things just happened for him. He had everything. If he was to have that beingness, he always said, God first, and they said, do your meditations, do your practices, then go out in the world, and then be involved completely in the world. And he was also a vegan, maybe vegetarian, and he would make for Thanksgiving these big turkeys out of non-turkey, like vegetable proteins. He was experimenting all the time with nutrition and and the kindness and compassion in his way. And also, if you are in the meditational states, the part of the idea is not to have, the fear of the animal in your blood system. Okay, that was, oh, and also it was mentioned, this is, I'm talking about this group here, the squares, being, not doing, I said that part, but inwardness and reflection. So his ascendant is in Virgo, as we can see, and also Chiron. And I look at Chiron like the wounds of, well, I'll talk about that in a minute. Anyway, the Neptune square Chiron, here is the Sabian symbol for that Chiron, a colored child playing with white children, and freedom. And it was about freedom from prejudice and racial prejudice, misunderstand. And his teaching, it's the misunderstandings of the nature of reality. And so I look at that, this sits on his ascendant because he came to heal this. He himself was swarthy and dark skinned. And, you know, as you can see, a person like this with a turban, you know, it would be not exactly your main thing, and you wouldn't want to be a freak show. But the highest levels of people also he met with, and I'm going to say that as well. Somehow I left it out. He, I could name his followers, but these might ring a bell for you. Luther Burbank, Eastman, the person who followed, who started Kodak, Calvin Coolidge, the president of the United States at this time, the president of Mexico, Emilio Gil. He met with Mahatma Gandhi and was given blessings by Mahatma Gandhi and Ramana Maharshi. So meaning he was worldwide. Everybody wanted to be with this man. That's why he took his last 10 years and did the writing as well. And he would have very little sleep because he did all these different exercises, which he's passed on. Not everything he did, but everything in this Kriya Yoga science of how you maintain a body. What he was going for was the ultimate state of union with God. When I look at that, and here it's in Gemini. I haven't said that, but Gemini, the being able to disseminate information, that is lots of information, it's a science. He's given writings beyond writings and scientific. He was such a scholar. His books are long and his poetry is amazing. And with the Chiron and ascendant in Virgo, it gives that sense of detail, of precision. And he was extremely precise, extremely exact, because in order for the science to work of a connection, it's very precise. So in these lessons, like each one is a magazine full. I don't know how else to describe it. It's a regular 8.5 by 11, and it's a magazine, and you learn all these things through it. So that's what he left. There is his exact lessons, and his followers have continued. With the moon here in Leo, he's able to be expressive and loving, but it's not all about his personality. It was about his mission to focus and give the science of Kriya and meditation and inspire people to stop the suffering that they were in, rescue the drowning man. Was that the image there for the Uranus? Let me just check if I'm doing that right. Yeah, a drowning man to be rescued. And this was the gold rush, the greed that we all have, but make that greed take your desires and make it this desire to be the greatest, fullest life potential you could be in a lifetime. Okay, so that's that square. And then I wrote square to there and the square to the moon. I want to talk about the Sabian symbol for that. After a heavy storm, a rainbow. The promise of success, self-liberation is guaranteed result of constant endeavor. So you can see how that fits into this. Well, it's pretty, moon the conjunct to that, but anyway, to all three of these, and they all come to this, these three, and these three are at square to each other, building that tension to make sure that the work really gets done. Again, of being, not doing. So that's the inward reflection, the colored child playing with white children, him being one in his own, although he was from a very high level family in India. He was born into, you know, his parents were both meditators and scientists, and he didn't live in poverty. But when you come to the West, there were people that would beat him up or hurt him if just because of the color of his skin being dark, and dressing in what in the Western culture at that time would look like a bathrobe or whatever. You know, it wouldn't be what you normally, and also that moon. Okay, then the last of the aspect here of Neptune is trine. Let's see what I put. I want to talk about this Neptune trine Saturn. And I already did say that's children blowing soap bubbles. And we learn, and what his teaching was, is we learn through play. We learn through play. We need to play as humanity. And maybe that sense of beauty also. Everywhere, all his things that surround him are very aesthetic, very beautiful. Now, my concluding aspect is the new moon prenatal 28, which is, this is again, Dane Rudger, an old bridge over a beautiful stream is still in constant use. And that's the energy in which he came in on this lifetime, is to have something very practical and to leave every tradition that still works through the life force of a living, beautiful stream, the nature, the part of humanity that is our emotional life force. And through that, a bridge that is old bridge, and it's still in constant use, made of the earth, but it's also seen like the traditions of he didn't just smash and start something new. He was here to revive something that worked. It was like a secret for humanity's health. One of the prayers that before you do these energization exercises is, "O eternal youth of body and mind, dwell in me forever and forever." I mean, it's that kind of thing of that we have the will in order to create our health, that more than people realize, through our meditation, through taking this being aspect, through all that. And so you can see I had 12 different Sabian symbols here of just the relationship that Neptune has with the other players. To me, nobody would think of Paramahansa Yogananda as wimpy, as a blow in the wind, as unfocused, or as just the Neptunian drunk, or spacey. But instead, it was purposeful to the extreme. He had a communication job to do, and it came through healing the wounds, through this choice he made to give to humanity up here in the 10th house. And of course, the Venus and the Mercury, he was highly intuitive. You could walk in front of him and he knew your thoughts. I mean, his students have so many things. I mean, he was a very intuitive being, but because he wasn't being, he had realized, as well as that he proved it the same way, if you believe in Jesus or Jesus's death, of that being able to transmute yourself, so that although you die, you're not really, you're transitioned into another form. And he proved that with his Mahasamadhi. He told people that he would be leaving. He was only 59. And he left 1 year before I was born. I was born in 53. And the first time I saw his picture, I burst in, and I haven't had this, I can't say with anyone else, where I cried. It was a picture of him, his last smile before he left. And that his body didn't deteriorate, but smelled beautiful, and there was no deterioration. And it's all scientific. He was a man of science, but the science of the inner world. And I look back to the Neptune and Pluto and MC to show that level of science and precision, as well as that in the finger of God. There is another one here that goes to the Mars, as you can see. I didn't point that out, but there's the other Yod. And I think I'll conclude by his North Node, a bridge being built across a gorge. And that's what he came to do. So I think I covered all my notes and wanted to give a very Dane Rudger. Am I saying his name correctly, or am I not? I can't hear you.
Yes, I think you're saying it right.
Okay,
What do you say, Edwin?
It's a very, I wanted to take my Dane Ridger methodology and apply it to this person that I have the utmost respect. I can hardly fathom that he did what he did in one lifetime. That was so short, only 59 years. And he's made such an impact on so many people, and he left something so concrete. Maybe that's that Saturn in the second house. He left something so concrete to give people after he left the planet. And I think when we talk about Neptune, we can think of someone who came in and changed much, whether, he changed much in the world. And I would say, of course, from the one that came before us, Jung, who had Jung changed so much. And I was thinking that was like, he was taking what was divided and made it whole, the subconscious, the unconscious, and made a whole out of the psychology. And, Paramahansa Yogananda was doing a different kind of making whole. But they both have greatly helped our planet and humanity. And so I conclude my presentation.
Thanks, Lauren. You said he left the world at 59, which is the second Saturn return, and we can see how many aspects that you covered about Saturn and the importance of Saturn, the connection with Neptune, with the sun, ruling the sun. Yes, I have no impression of him. I learned from you about him for the first time. Thanks for introducing him to us, to those of us that don't know him, because I guess some of you do. But by listening to how enthusiastic you are about the effect he had on you, I can see the direct reflection of Neptune and Pluto on the MC exactly. I just wanted to add one quick thing, that this is such a rare thing to have Neptune conjunct Pluto in general. Once every 500 years, isn't it? They have a cycle of 500 years. So he was born not just during that cycle, as also Rudyard is and many others, but he was born exactly at the peak of the conjunction. So that's, I think, why this social destiny was maybe predetermined and was seen by whoever advised him. You mentioned that somebody advised him to
Lahiri Mahasai, the parents had brought the child for blessing as a baby. And Lahiri Mahasai was also in this lineage of a completely enlightened being on the planet, and said, oh, this is his destiny.
Yes, well, that combination, even if we didn't have Pluto there with the Neptune, is definitely pointing out to some sort of social influence. So that person is capable of having social influence. And then from what you said, he seems to have taken advantage of it and really materialized it. and kind of materialized for the others as well. This Leo connection is very interesting. So much fire in that chart, and I can see why it touches the same buttons in your own chart. You have so much fire too. The Leo moon, the sun in the 5th house, the Sagittarius planets, many things like this. So yeah, interesting chart, very interesting chart.
And I did go through everything. As you can see, there is that grand trine and fire here. But what I was trying to do was stay with the Neptune.
Yes, very good, because otherwise we can just, we can go anywhere anyway.
Tell the Aries in me.
Yes,
I'm
very focused.
You know, counting them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different important aspects that Neptune has in this chart.
Yes.
Besides, I like being able to present people. I know I sometimes think I must be too much for but I am just basically enthusiastic. That's what I'm built with. That's who I am. I'm very enthusiastic about that which I'm enthusiastic.
It seems like he was too, and had a very similar energy of this contagious spreading of not just the message, but the aura, the charisma. Seems like somebody with a very strong charisma. The moon rising with ascendant in the self-preservation, or what was it? The body preservation techniques. I connect this a lot to ascendant in Virgo, and to other things as well. But the ascendant in Virgo, I think, helped here a lot. By any chance, do you have handy? If you don't have it handy, forget about it. But do you have the Sabian symbol for the sun? I was very curious about that while I was listening to you.
I know I must have done it, but let me.
Don't worry too much. I don't want to waste too much time.
Can you tell me what to look up?
On your chart, I don't really see the degree of the sun.
Excuse me. Hold on.
No, it's 16th. Yeah, I can see down in the table. Okay, so 16th degree of Capricorn. It is. It's just kind of maybe summing up the mission of the real purpose of that. And I wrote down what you said. We learn to play, and I think that's very much sun in the 5th house.
Did you say 16 Capricorn?
Yep.
School grounds filled with boys and girls in gymnasium suits. The need for physical activity and play, especially in adolescence. And he set up his school for boys. He gives before you meditate, you have a very specific where you contact every part of your body and you energize it with your will and with your focus, and you begin again it's very, and it works. But the society has learned that a balanced combination of intellectual study and physical activity is necessary for the harmonious development of the human personality. Adults often forget this under the pressure of money making and other duties, and this symbol reminds us of it.
Very good. Very good. I think it's very relevant. Does anyone else have any questions before we move on? Or comments on this one?
I do. The Self-Realization Fellowship, do they offer teachings based in astrology as well? And did he use astrology? Are you aware?
I believe he was very aware of the science of it, but I'm not familiar that he did, but that would be something I will look into. I love applying astrology to his life now, but I think in India, astrology is like part of the science of life. And I am sure I probably could read autobiography of a yogi again and see that would be so. I'll look into it. Thank you. I like that. But I don't know. I mean, I apply it myself.
With a passion.
With a passion, yes.
Yes, I am passionate I think maybe my Mars and Venus conjunct in Taurus. What do you think? Maybe that
Yeah,
part?
very connected to that. And to the moon in Leo. I always have this flashback to your moon in Leo conjunct the South Node. So I think you're not for the first time like this. But I see how people with a lot of fire, which I don't have, I can watch you now. This chart was another example, have this intuitive connection with others and with others like them as well. So kind of picking up to the same energy, which is great.
It helps people that work with me. I tell you, the service of astrology towards the individuals who have come to me, that's been nonstop, people coming for help or understanding. And I bow to astrology. I bow to Dane Rudger and how I cannot, it's hard to believe how beautiful it gives us help in helping others.
That's right. That's right. Thank you very much, Lauren. It was a very good presentation. I suggest another quick break, only 5 minutes. And
Thank you.
Then it's your turn, Dwayne.
Okay.
Okay. See you soon.
See you.
I always like to honor your presentation of our weekly topic, Radlina, because you do such a beautiful job with it. It's very evocative, and I use that as part of my inspiration for my homework. And I'm sure other people do as well. It's really a great way to start things off. So I started last week coming out of our session with the inspiration to explore Leonard Cohen's life for the Neptune factor. But after a day or two, I suddenly got a hit to check out Jimi Hendrix. And as it turns out, Hendrix is much more a Neptunian figure than Cohen in my estimation. So I ended up with Jimi Hendrix. Neptune, master of ecstasy. When men have become shaken loose by Uranian power from the grip of Saturnian egoism and from the inertia of static tradition, they find themselves floating into a new world utterly different from their old habitat. A world fluidic, scintillating with light, a world of strange perceptions, of glamorous mirages for some, of transcendental realizations for others. This is the realm of Neptune, the realm of ecstasy and mystic revelation, the realm of glamour and deceiving phantasms, the realm of hallucination and intoxication, the realm of the astral sea, perfidious in its shallow waters, sublime where great depths balance the iridescent surface. It is the realm of the collective, where the individual either loses himself in fallacious nirvanas or receives the robe of glory, the garment of Christ, of which all mystics have spoken. The realm of dissolution and chaos, or the realm of synthesis and transcendent consciousness, in which the face of God is beheld, and the small cell realizes the magnitude and glory of the cosmic organism wherein it moves and has its being. So I in my exploration this week, encountered a massive download of information about Jimi Hendrix. There is so much out on the internet, and so much of it is his music that you can hear. And I had it was overwhelming to me to think of trying to portray elements of this man's life without any music accompanying the presentation. But there's the problem of copyright and so on. So I withheld acting on bringing in some of his copyrighted music, but instead I encountered a contribution to his, or an honoring of his life by someone who I think is in the same spirit of sharing that I am. And so I have something here just to preface his life. I'm sure some of you don't know of Jimi Hendrix and have maybe not seen into his life, but that's where we're headed. So. Have you ever been to Electric Ladyland? The magic carpet waits for you, so don't you be late. From my favorite album of his, a double album called Electric Ladyland. So right off the top, we recognize Jimi Hendrix as a Sagittarian. And sun sign astrology would kind of leave it at that. But being of a Rudyard persuasion, I'm always looking for what's beyond the sun sign astrology. And that takes us to where Rudyard would point us. Now and this is going to mess the heads of a few people here because I'm using a house system that I've only really recently started using, and that is called the natural house system. I didn't enter into it because I wanted to research house systems. I suddenly got this feeling of the usefulness of this particular lens, let's say. All house systems are, kind of by choice, and there's variance among them. But here we're going with the same structure as the zodiac. And in this case, we have this Sagittarian in the 9th house, Mercury, Sun, Venus, and Juno all conjoined up there in the 9th house. And as Jimi was to proclaim, music is his religion. And he certainly was a passionate and religious person in that sense. Now, Rudyard will call us to the lunation cycle and to begin any analysis of a birth chart with a determination of the lunation birthday. Now, as he says, the lunation cycle should be the very foundation of any astrological interpretation of personality, as well as of health and happiness or ease of function. Thus, the fact that a person is born at one phase or another of this solely lunar cycle conditions and often determines his typical character. It defines the person's fundamental nature. Well, when we look to Jimmy's chart, we find that he was born in what's called the disseminating sector of the lunation cycle. 232.8 degrees is the sun-moon angle, which means that his fundamental nature, according to this view, would be one of not only, well, dissemination, but certainly demonstration, performance of vision. A challenge presented from inside. So definitely a consciousness orientation. His key to all worlds is pointing to this fundamental nature. So keep that in mind as we move ahead. So again, this is the natural house system. Whenever I encounter a new chart, I look immediately for the anaretic, any expression of anaretic degrees, either the final degree of a sign, which is conventionally what we look at, but also look at the initial degree of the next sign. So either 30 degrees of the one or 0 degrees of the next. These are very, in my estimation, very potent indicators of a person's core destiny. So Jimmy has Chiron anaretic, and this was before Chiron had actually been discovered. So he was born in 42, Chiron discovered, I believe, in 77. But to my way of thinking, he is a Chiron exemplar, sent to kind of, I don't know, a healing mission. He certainly has been that for a number of people I know. So a Chiron anaretic in the 5th house and Leo. We're evoking here the notion of Chiron being a bridge between the Saturnian realm, or the status quo, and the Uranian realm. And this is the conscious living, conscious dying significator in the birth chart. So I'm not sure what year Jimmy expressed this, but I think it was towards the end of his life. I will be dead in 5 years' time. But while I am here, I will travel many highways, and I will, of necessity, die at a time when my message of love, peace, and freedom can be shared with people all over the world. Well, in fact, that's pretty much what happened. Now, in the development of his consciousness, his beingness, individuation kicked in, as far as I can see, at the first quarter square of the Saturn cycle. So right around age 21. Here's Jimmy in 1961 at age 19. Drafted, actually not drafted into the American military, but compelled because of a misdemeanor. He was compelled to become a soldier. Now, this is a fellow who has a very, very soft side and who has no significant or no planets in Earth signs. So he's essentially air and fire with a little bit of water. And I'm so glad he did not get taken off to war and go where that went. Now, at age 21, along with this individuation factor, he met two of his longtime heroes, B.B. King and Albert King. I like to think that the poker game of life dealt him a pair of kings here, because Jimmy did not read music, so he's not like a trained musician. He played entirely intuitively. So for him to encounter these two men, each in their own time, on a kind of a one-to-one basis, he was empowered by that. And specifically at age 21, he's moving from the spring of his life into the summer. And he just, once he had that empowerment, he just was compelled to explode and to demonstrate, to perform. You have to, and along the idea of individuation, he's said it right here. You have to forget about what other people say when you're supposed to die or when you're supposed to be loving. You have to forget about all these things. You have to go on and be crazy. Craziness is like heaven. Well, the image on the right is the moment Jimi Hendrix became a superstar in North America. He grew up, he was born in Seattle. His early career was, brought him employment, but not fame. But he made it at one point over to Europe, where he did become famous. He became famous on the European continent. When he came back to North America, it was to the Monterey International Pop Festival. And he became instantly world famous overnight because his performance was absolutely electrifying and totally outside the bounds of anything anybody had ever experienced with a man and a guitar. And in closing out the end of his act, he literally burned his guitar. And I can still remember as a young man hearing news of, holy smokes, Hendrix burned his guitar on stage. I mean, that was a riveting image that affected all kinds of people. And that was just the nature of Jimi Hendrix. He acted on guidance. He said before that performance things like, I don't think I'm crazy, but I got to do something here. I got to make a sacrifice. Well, that was the sacrifice, one of his favorite guitars going up in flames. Now, I find it very interesting because, as Redlina said earlier, I have this long-standing interest in the Saturn-Uranus cycle. Well, there's Jimmy being born right at the start of the previous to our time now Saturn-Uranus cycle. Shortly after his birth, then the first atomic blast. So here we have, what's going on in the outer world, and then we have what's going on in the inner world of a musician. And the two are somehow interwoven. And he was a very plutonic performer in that respect. And there's, I think of his life as kind of like a meteor who, he flamed big and bright and then it was out. But if you track the stages in the Saturn-Uranus cycle that he lived through, we see that, up at the square in 51, then we pushed down into the 60s. He was that meteor in the 60s who, by the end of the 60s, by the time of Woodstock, he was a superstar And I like to think of his performance at Woodstock as being kind of the exclamation point for the whole of the 60s. It really was a dramatic performance where he played the national anthem in a way that brought in the whole tenor of the times, complete with bombs going off and battle on the stage. He portrayed it all musically, and it was just a superstar kind of moment. So I like to think, I really like using this graphic on the left because, we all are growing and expanding in consciousness, presumably. And as Lauren has shown, the Yogananda has a teaching around that very process, how to concentrate your focus and grow up through domains of consciousness. So we have these different domains related here to the orbits of the planets, and beginning way down at the bottom there with your lunation cycle as the foundation. So pushing up. And so we're all in our own personal growth, pushing through these different domains of consciousness. And when we get up into the upper reaches, we're dealing with what Rudyard calls the ambassadors from the galaxy. These planets, the three outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, are transcendental to the status quo mentality, which is usually bounded then by Saturn, and with Chiron providing the key to going beyond the Saturnian boundaries in a proactive way, and Uranus providing the shattering of boundaries that comes with its dynamic. So focusing more specifically on the Neptune factor, now this is from a handbook for the humanistic astrologer, Michael Mayer. This is an awesome contribution to the whole humanistic astrology movement. He's very good at going to the like first principles. So when we look at Neptune, function, destruction of antiquated forms through a process of universalization. The purpose of Neptune in this process is release of self. It's a release of that larger part of us that is normally contained. The traditional meaning, impressibility, nebulousness, psychic phenomena, imagination. Humanistic meaning, the dissolution of old forms and values established within the Saturnian realm, replacing them with more inclusive and universal systems and values. In its negative manifestation, Neptune represents the urge to escape into a realm of formlessness, irrationality, and meaninglessness. A retrograde Neptune can point to a realization of universal oneness, or if negative, self-destruction and abnegation. Using this natural house system, Jimmy's Neptune sits right on the descendant, the seventh house cusp, where I don't know, I feel like I have a mystical connection with the man, and I think a few other people have that as well. That might be one aspect of this placement. Another aspect, when we look into, we'll call it the dark side of Neptune, seventh house is the house of contract relationships, which is what a musician thrives on. The contracts are what get people business. as musicians. And with Jimmy, of course, those contracts went from being, involving a few hundreds, maybe a few thousands of dollars, to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And as it turns out, his manager, with the confusion that comes with Neptune and the lack of boundaries, his manager managed to scam him of hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's a whole side of Jimmy's life that, is there for those who want to research that sort of thing. Along with the whole drug scene, Jimmy was not a hardcore drug user, but he had his soft heart went more to psychedelics. On the burning edge horizon, I'm sailing on a bluebird's mission. That's the Jimmy that I prefer to retain in memory. So LSD and psychedelics in general were the drug of choice during the 60s, and discovered by a Swiss scientist by accident I think it was in the early 40s. So that's part of the whole generational phenomena that the 60s was. LSD brought us flower power, and it was a very pervasive feeling that just made its way through the cultures worldwide, and it was real. If you were caught that feeling, it was life-changing. I, for one, I didn't have a Volkswagen, but I had a very small British automobile called, what the heck was it? Anyway, it was about this size. And I sent to San Francisco for stick-on flowers and plastered them all over my car, my little Hillman. And it really was a wonderful era. And Jimmy's first album, very psychedelic influence. And his, the question went out, are you experienced? Which was really about, have you dropped acid? Have you penetrated that boundary and gotten outside the box of your culture? This was just a pervasive psychedelic phenomena worldwide. Jimmy, for a teenager like myself, he had it all, sex, drugs, rock and roll. It was all wrapped up in this one persona. Electric Ladyland. He was very much associated with women in his long-standing, in his not so long-standing life, but he, that was a big part of his lifestyle, was to be in relationship, one after the other, as it turns out. Imagination is the key to my lyrics. The rest is painted with a little science fiction. He did have his wide-ranging philosophical interests. This particular quote is riveted in my mind. It is spoken during one of his songs, and I have always thought back to this particular aphorism. It's really an affirmation of individuation. One of his later albums, Valleys of Neptune. Yeah, Lord, I feel the ocean swaying me, washing away all my pain. See where I used to be wounded? Remember the scar? Now you can't see a thing. And I don't feel no pain. Oh no, hey, Singing about the valleys of sunrise, green and blue canyons too. I'm singing about Atlantis, Atlantis love songs. Valleys of Neptune is rising, rising, rising. If there is something to be changed in this world, then it can only happen through music. A very evocative thought. So I really think he was a tremendous visionary. He carried a lot of us forward into perception of visceral perception of the love land up ahead. And with that, I will get that. Could you try again? Close my presentation. So I'm sorry if I kind of rambled off there too much. It really was an expansive, the gas giant of Neptune is quite a sphere to navigate through. So there you go.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Dwayne.
You're welcome.
Question for you, Dwayne, if you're under questions yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I wanted to ask, because you used that house system, and of course I noticed the Neptune on the, what we call the descendant, right? What was if it were the other type of charting, what is his ascendant? I was looking for it and I couldn't really find it. Do we know what the number and sign of his ascendant was?
Yeah, I didn't work that into my my week here, so I don't have that for you at this moment. But
he did have a time of birth, it looked like.
Oh yeah.
I've got 2441 Sagittarius.
Oh, thank you. Tell me one more time. I'm going to look it up.
2441 Sagittarius.
Sagittarius. So he wouldn't actually, I mean, in that, as you said, the natural house system, that was on the descendant. But if it wasn't an Aries beginning, but instead of Sag, where would that Neptune have been, is my question. Can anybody tell me?
So if you send this in Sagittarius?
Yes, 25 degrees.
Then it's very likely the Neptune will be around the 10th house, isn't it?
That's what I was wondering. Wait a minute. Let me think. Paramahansa Yogananda, he had 10th house, and
or maybe the other way around. Maybe it's on the IC. If you want, we can check the chart with the other system. Shall we?
Well, is that disturbing your presentation if I ask that question?
Oh, no.
Interesting, actually. I was also curious where the Neptune would fall if we're not using the natural zodiac.
We're in another type of system.
I've got Neptune in the 9th house.
Okay, so maybe
still rising. Neptune in the 9th house is still rising. I mean, culminating. Excuse me, culminating itself close to the MC.
Not close to the MC, no.
Is it not? Okay, it all depends on the system we use.
Yeah, that's using Placidus.
Okay.
Radalina, could you bring up that chart for us?
I just wondered if you can help me with the date of birth quickly.
Well, Dwayne would know.
Yeah.
Wait, could you tell me the date of birth and the time? Or I can.
27th of November, 1942.
27th.
Yeah.
27th of November, 1942, right? And the time?
10:15 a.m.
In Seattle, Washington. I remember that part.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
If you want to explore his life further,
Okay.
on Astrodienst or astro.com,
I'm doing it on Solar Fire, and I've got it now. So Neptune, yes, okay, I'll show it to you in a
Yeah,
second.
I would think more like 11th house. Let's see.
It's in
Affecting
the
fruit.
ninth. It's in the ninth, really.
Okay.
Even with my system, but okay.
Of course, I do equal house, so I'm not that great with this.
Here we go.
Here we
Okay,
go.
that's what I'm having.
Oh yeah. Well, it's still extremely prominent. You know, it's the planet that's the highest at the top, isn't it?
Yes.
It is.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So again, you know, I mean, definitely a Neptune person, you know.
Especially with the Sun and Venus in the 12th house, I think that's quite important too.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and that cluster of the Sun in the 12th with the Venus in the 12th would be more that Pisces vibration of the 12th house, which he had, and would emphasize his Neptune.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And Jupiter is in a very close square to the MC. Yeah, that's actually exact. So Jupiter rules the chart, rules the ascendant, the planets in Sagittarius. That's why I'm looking into it. And it's the old ruler of Pisces as well. So if we're looking for Piscean signatures, I guess there are plenty.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And look at that. Yeah. Now, you know, seeing that Neptune trine the Uranus there in the 5th house.
Yeah.
You know, he, like Dwayne's presentation said, he was, you know, he changed, he was wild, and maybe all those epitome of those statements, and burning his favorite guitar on stage, and just being a meteor of light, of unusualness. He was shocking, especially take the iconic song. I don't know why I'm the Star Spangled Banner, and playing it the way he did in music was so unforgettable. The way he dressed, the life he lived.
Yeah, and Uranus is opposite Mercury, exactly. So that if we consider Mercury part of the group of 3 on the, say, in the 12th or 12th house cusp, and then Uranus, that's, I think, a very good point. He was very Uranian, wasn't he?
So
Right.
Uranian creations
Also
were
very
wild,
Uranian.
flamboyant, shocking,
Yes.
electric, everything, that he was a creator that had never come. It's like there was no one before him like him in that mode. And after, everybody is kind of goes back to being compared to him in that mode of music. And I didn't know the power of love and the love of power. Will there be peace? I have heard that quoted a bunch of times. I didn't know it was from Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah. Yes, it's a mixture of Uranus and Neptune, I believe, that quote, isn't it?
And I don't want to forget, as a collective of people who have been with Dwayne for so many months, wishing you a happy birthday as a group.
Yes. Yes.
thank you.
Well, yeah.
Well,
You know,
thank you,
I
Dwayne.
just have to share a little synchronicity. We love synchronicities, right?
Yes.
So it's my 72nd birthday, and in the mail from my daughter comes just in time.
Ah.
Let me
I mean,
see it
how
again.
Jimi Hendrix is that?
Let me see I didn't see it because all of a sudden something else came on. Can you, let me change my view.
There I am. I'm giving you the full view here. Goes around the back.
Wow.
Oh my God.
That was a gift from your daughter.
Yes.
Wow.
She knows her dad.
We all need
She knows
one.
you well. She knows you very well.
She does.
Fabulous.
Someday I hope she'll show up here with us.
So
Yes.
you said it's your 72nd?
72nd. And you know, 72 is the 1 degree of precession of the equinoxes. So it's kind of a
Yeah.
special one.
You've done one step in the cycle, in the big cycle of life.
Yeah.
That's an
And you
accomplishment.
know, this whole use of the natural, I really highly recommend you give it a shot, because it seems to me that it's calling us to our planetary, our whole Earth selves. It's like the Earth, a reference point for the species. I'm going to link that to the Sphinx. So the Sphinx, you know, we look at the Sphinx and find that interesting. What I find really interesting is, what is the Sphinx looking at? Well, she is looking to that eastern horizon, which is where all newness comes from. You know, zero Aries. It's the primordial beginning point. You know, if we think of the species itself having a birth chart, it's going to look something like the zodiac, and the 1st degree of Aries being on the east point there. So I don't know, that's just kind of
You are proposing a very Neptunian way of doing astrology, I think. You're saying it doesn't matter where you were born on the face of the earth. It's one earth, we're one people, we're all the same. The background is the same for everyone. So we all start from zero Aries. Is that what you...
It's the universalization factor, you know?
So yeah, principle. So why not? Even though I'm kind of more inclined to explore the other side of things first, to focus on the personal, define that first, and then maybe go to Neptune with the zodiac.
Say is that what is good is when we don't feel too attached to one way or the other, and look at many different ways. It's like taking something and turning it this way and examining it, turning it that way and examining it, that we don't think, oh, it's not the right way. You know,
not at all. It's just at the same time, each one of us has to connect with the thing.
Yes.
Like if you are thinking, oh, I would like to learn a new language, then you would definitely pick a different language, each one of us, I guess, because you would have this sentiment, which is also a Neptunian thing, maybe, what we feel triggered by, what we feel interested in, dreamy about. So this is kind of finding your own Neptunian truth in a way, and then things start working better. So in interpretation, you can use another system and it will work better for you. But if I betray my own feeling of what the system should be and just copy and paste from somewhere because somebody says so, maybe it won't work for me. So that's sort of, I'm kind of agreeing with you, Lauren, actually. Yeah, but just saying it differently. Anyway,
I liked seeing your way of presenting it, and I like seeing it, just this comparison. And thank you, Redalina, for bringing that up for me to look at, and for all of us to look at.
Oh, yes. You're welcome. You're welcome. And
you're going to do a presentation too, Redalina.
Well, we run out of time. So I think this would be postponed. I've got something for you, but it's too late. I know everybody's now tired. Obviously, I didn't plan it very well because I thought, I don't know how I thought we could do 6. Definitely the limit is 3. So we have enough time to, roam around them, speak, and also, discuss, have questions. So if we ever do this again, and I'm about to propose that we do this again in some form, with the charts, then we have to limit it to 3 presentations. So we are all more kind of relaxed about it too. So, okay, I will keep mine for later, for some other time.
And if I wanted to say, just like you were going between Leonard Cohen and Jimi Hendrix, I was going between Edgar Cayce and Paramahansa Yogananda. And I went with where my passion was. but I thought it would be, and that I could feel with this group, I could give you more because I knew so much about his life and his music and his teachings and his writings. But
Great.
for Edgar Cayce would be someone who had a very strong Neptune as well.
Okay, so time to ask then. What do you want to do next time, or generally in the future? Any ideas for next topics? I kind of wanted to do this again in some shape and form, but just wondering how to formulate it. Can we look for other examples? But again, we need to have a focus. Like now we have Neptune as a focus. So it's not just generally discussing the charts, but showing something there as an effect. Maybe we can do a Uranian effect next time, or a Plutonian effect. What do you think?
Nodes, the nodes right now, Neptune is that still true that Neptune, how long is
Yes.
Neptune?
Okay. Well, actually, I wanted to show you the chart of the day. Maybe that won't require a lot of time, or we can take a look because you asked. Let's see where it is.
And I want to thank you, Rodolina, for one other thing, which was I don't know how I missed it, that 500 cycle of Pluto and Neptune exact, and that he came in on the peak of it. But I think that was a very important thing you pointed out to me. And I almost feel like I want to go back. Okay, let me think every time in history that happened. Who came?
Yes, well, that person that you chose was such an interesting example because he was born exactly then.
Yeah.
And even if I had been looking for someone like this, I think I wouldn't have found easily other examples. So that was great. That was very, very interesting. Yeah, today we have Moon in the middle of Scorpio, and the nodes are exactly square Neptune. It's just 1 degree difference, but we can still say exactly square Neptune. That would be, I mean, this has been going on. Do you see the chart, by the way? I'm not sure if you.
Quite a long time, isn't it?
Can't see the top.
Oh, okay. Let me try to share it with you in some other way. Some other. Okay. What about now? Is it better?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, so basically pretty much the whole 2020 we had Neptune square the nodes because it was going forward and backward around the middle of Pisces, and it just last year and this year it coincides with the nodes, and maybe we can say that's the peak of Neptune in Pisces that particular year when we have it meeting the nodes in that way, because ever since it went into Pisces in 2011. And until the end, 2025, it will not be in such a contact with the nodes.
And it's right on my descendant.
Okay, you have descendant in Pisces.
I have Sun in Pisces. It's done that bit. It's on the descendant now, and then it's going to hit my retrograde Mercury in Pisces.
When do we need to do your chart next time? Because you sound like a typical Neptunian.
I have that Neptune. Now is my my Mercury is at 20 degrees, right? No, that's at 20 degrees of Pisces, so it's being hit with the nodes as well. But it's
do you remember, Lauren, when we spoke about your chart earlier in the summer?
Yes.
And when we did your consultation for the chart, Neptune was exactly on the Mercury, I remember at the time. So it had been forward, and then now it's back again. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's an interesting aspect, our nodes. But I don't think that's worth a session.
No, we already did that. I mean, I think we paid our fair share of it.
But the idea of doing, for example, like we've done today, Neptune people, the idea of maybe doing it like for Uranus or for Pluto, would that be something interesting? I mean, certainly Pluto is something which might be, I don't know, I'd be interested in that.
Yeah, I think I was thinking of this idea of the three trans-Saturnian planets, the outer
Yeah, yeah,
because each one of them has this effect of
yes,
revolutionizing society through an individual. So if an
exactly.
individual is a very strong Uranian, Neptunian, or Plutonian, we have it, and it will be interesting to see how in different ways that can be. So
Exactly.
in our today's examples, we had those Neptunians that are influencing big masses of people and kind of having effects, like a mesmerizing effect on the public in one way or another, to their music, to their teachings, to their other kind of work. But if you want, we can do it as a series now.
Yes.
Next 2 times we can do Uranian personalities or Plutonian. So you choose which one of the two.
Either. It'd be very interesting.
So okay, I vote for the Uranian. I know, just out of
I vote for Uranian.
Because
Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix just kind of opened up the Uranian door.
exactly. Also, we're still in Aquarius season, and maybe it's a good if we do that discussion while we're still in Sun in Aquarius. My example, actually, I won't tell you who that is. I'll tell you next time, so it's interesting. But I discovered that this guy is actually a lot Uranian as well, so could be used. Used for Pluto too, so I'm not choosing it because of that presentation, but can be adopted. Are you happy with this? Uranian personalities next time?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, I need more volunteers for presentations.
That's it, I've done my bit.
So we've got 2 spaces, let's say, 2 presentations.
Are you doing one?
Yeah, I can do mine in the beginning of next time, the one that I was meant to do today.
Let's do that.
I think we should keep it to 3 because we saw today that.
And is there a way, like when I was talking, we could have cut me off, that we could have, or we could
No,
make
I think
shorter?
it wouldn't have been a good idea because all 3 of you took the same time, pretty much. And it was necessary. I think if it was shorter than that, we wouldn't have had the chance to properly look at it.
And
I don't mind doing a presentation because I learned so much, but I also don't want to Dwayne normally does a presentation. We love his presentations.
Yes.
So, but we don't, if we open it up to more people than 3.
That's what I wanted. Yeah, that's what I wanted. I'm sure that's why you're silent, Dwayne, because you want to give the chance to others too. But I'm sure you're always a volunteer for the work.
And I want other people to not be feeling there's no time for them.
Absolutely.
So much I've never seen his chart, Paramahansa Yogananda's, from anyone else. And, I'm thinking I would like to bring this to people if they wanted to see it and infuse astrology to them. But anyway, meaning when you do a chart of someone, you go so deep, like you did with Jimmy, like you did with Jung. I got so much from that. So we all get a lot when we give.
Yeah, for me, Jung has been in my life since I was 25, and so it's like it's been, so for me, it was really interesting. I had never actually looked at his chart.
Right.
So
very interesting.
It really was. So I really am very grateful for having had that experience. Indeed, it was very, very positive for me.
Yes, and for us too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was.
I'm very interested in Uranus as well. So I don't know, but I don't, I can't think of anybody, but I'm sure that I could think of someone.
Yeah, what I would do, when I started my search, I didn't know who I would find.
Yeah.
Me too. So experiment. You don't need to have the answer now.
No.
Does anyone, maybe of the new people that are with us today,
Exactly.
take somebody on and present it to us? You don't need to know now who that is. Just like today. Today was a test. We had never done this before, so that's why we wanted to see, how it will be with the time and with everything. But now you have a better idea. So if you wish, But I really needed to be serious and to turn up because we were meant to. Well, luckily, the other two girls didn't turn up because we wouldn't have had time for them. But if we choose 3 presentations, they have to be, you know, them next time. Dwayne, you can prepare one just in case, you know, if you want. And if it doesn't get to it, you can use it for Pluto. I'm just suggesting it.
I have an idea that might be good for some, few of us, and that is to, rather than doing a whole presentation, compress it into doing a single meme, an astrological meme of your own choosing.
What is a meme?
By that I mean I think of a meme as an image and text combined, and it's to put it out into the field. I mean, the Twitter sphere is filled with memes. They're just really concise expressions of particular principles, points of view.
Like one of your slides, like one of your slides.
Yeah, virtually, that's what it is. But
so each of us could come up with a slide of. We could each come up with a slide of. You could do your full presentation, Rudlene. I'm not saying you wouldn't, since you've already prepared it. But maybe the rest of us could come up with just a slide of Uranus and a quote and an image.
Okay, well, the idea is to do a workshop for chart reading. And the reason we're choosing Uranus is just to have a focus. But we have already done a talk on Uranus separately. Aquarius, Uranus, 11th house. We have also done Saturn, Uranus. So Uranus has been represented many times in our discussions. We can do it again, of course. But here I was thinking if we did today Neptunian personalities, then to do the other 2 personal planets in the same way, kind of, so that there is some consistency in what we are publishing also afterwards. But if you're not, I mean, we can.
That sounds good. If you're just, that I would do one, Dwayne would do one, that you would do one, but we don't.
I'd love to do one too. A Uranian personality. I'd be very interested to do.
So. Okay, it's fine. You can do that again.
But can I just say, at the same time, I'm aware I'd love to do it, but is there anybody else but us that would like to do it who has not done it before? That's, because.
Now's the time to say, please. Guys, don't be shy.
Anybody? Hello.
Who else is people? How about? Would Stephen like to do one?
But maybe Stephen would like to do one, but he's not with us anymore. Yeah.
Okay. In the first part of the morning, and then he has to go to work.
Yes. So we don't know. We don't know if he could.
Okay. Now, what I suggest we do then. We don't decide on the group for next time, but you send me emails. If any of you that is still here with us now, or I would also post that when I post about the next event, I will ask people to volunteer by email. And if you want to do one, just drop me a line and say, okay, can I be on the queue, please? Like, can I be part of the list? And then I will decide. I will email back those people that I've decided to
pick
up.
Idea.
Yes.
Well done.
How we do that?
That's a good idea.
You may still end up to be the ones, like the same ones.
Good idea. That's sort of more.
Depends if others reach out as well.
It's more democratic.
Yeah, something like that.
All right. So we'll say goodbye.
So what are we doing next time then?
It will be Uranian personalities.
But you're going to do. I get it now. I understand.
Okay. So the same chart reading, but. Let's limit it to 3 this time, because we saw we need the time. Yeah, and it will just give us a bit more room for talking. And I'm sure that if you present too many charts, it's too much information, isn't it?
Too much, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then obviously what comes after that will be Plutonian personality.
Yes.
Think ahead of that as well.
Very interesting. Brilliant. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you to everybody, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
See you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.